Welcome to Quantum Revenue Expansion, where we keep you motivated, inspired, and thinking big. Up-leveling into quantum revenue is a choice that we can all make in any moment, and then continue to make that choice to stay in that space each day. On this podcast, Ursula will share revenue growth strategies to reach your next level and introduce you to CEOs just like you who are making it happen. What's your next quantum leap going to be? See it, own it, and take that first step. If this is you, then Ursula wants to invite you to join us at the next 2X Intensive now. Go to salescoachnow.com/apply. You're listening to Quantum Revenue Expansion with your host, Ursula Menchez. Let's go.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Quantum Revenue Expansion, the podcast. I'm so excited because I have the coolest guest here today. We might laugh, we might cry. Dr. Barbara Portzline is in the house, growing her super successful business, telling us all the things. And the thing I love about you, Barbara, is you're just honest. So I don't even know what's going to come out of your mouth today, and that makes me really happy. So I'm super excited to provide entertainment, joy, and some amazing tips along the way, because today we're talking about how to rewrite your story, got to do it, and exponentially expand your business. And on our show and our programs, we talk a lot about rewriting the story. And I love what you're going to bring to it today, though, the twist on it, how it's worked for you, and really what you recommend for others. So before I tell you about Barbara, a couple housekeeping things. Oh, so many things. If you haven't yet, go to my homepage, ursulainc.co. And to the gentleman out there who owns the .com, I still want to buy it. Like, that's a whole other show. All right. On the homepage, there's Quantum Revenue Expansion, the masterclass, which goes along with the podcast. So you haven't downloaded that, definitely grab that. If you haven't been to the 2X Intensive and you want to come and play next year in 2X sales and shave 10 or more hours off your work week, you can go to ursulainc.co/apply. Send us some details about you and your company, and we'll tell you all about the 2X Intensive. We'd love to have you. All right, that's enough. Let's dive in. So Dr. Barbara Portzline helps business owners close the gap between where their business is and their vision for it. Her personal mission is to help 100,000 businesses innovate so they can make more of an impact in our world and fall in love with the work they do, which I think is missing from the world today. Using a combination of deep organizational development experience and her intuitive gifts, her work supports a cross-discipline integrated approach to strategy, which is like no other. And I can say, I know your clients love you. I know you just have given so much to the world. And we go all the way back to Polka Dot Powerhouse. So for our PDP friends who are listening, a shout out to that and that connection. And I remember flying to New Mexico to hang out with you guys, which was amazing. And we've just been in each other's worlds. So let's start with your story. What's your story? What brought you into the world of revenue? And also maybe along the way, how did you start to rewrite your story?
Ooh, well, like you said, we never know what's going to come out of my mouth. So let's see what story I tell today. I'm going to tell the short story since we only have about 30 minutes for this. I was so tired of working at places where it felt like a dysfunctional family. And, I think about my, I'll say my 20s, we'll start at 20s because I've got a lot there. But basically in my 20s, I would take positions. I would be so excited to work at a new company. My background was in psychology. I thought, I'm going to help people. I'm going to make a great impact. I'm so excited to work with this great, amazing boss that's hiring me. And shortly after, and this has happened multiple times, shortly after, I wind up in a situation where I just feel like all of the stuff that takes place in dysfunctional families, because I did study psychology, the borderline tendencies, the backbiting, the secrets, all of that stuff played out in the workplace. And I would get so deflated. One of the things you mentioned is I want people to fall in love with the work they did. Yeah. I would go in excited about falling in love with the work, and I would leave every day feeling like I was going to throw up and I was trapped. And I I did this for years. And I remember, I don't know how many of your listeners ever had that Sunday night feeling where you have that like pit. Yeah, you have that pit. Raise your hand high. You have
Everybody,
that.
raise your hand. I can see
Raise
you
your
all
hand.
over.
Even if you're just
Not,
listening,
not if
raise
you're
your
driving
hand.
or
Uh-huh.
on the elliptical. Okay.
Right? It's like you just feel like, oh my God, I can't even go to bed. I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night. I'm so nervous. I don't want to go to work. I'm walking on eggshells. And I just couldn't stand it. And I saw so many people in that situation.
Yeah.
And so that really was the impetus for me to start looking at the workplace in a very different way.
Is there more to like, are you going to, I
There
want to,
is, but I wasn't sure if I should stop talking
yes,
because I can go on forever and it'll just be the Barbara podcast. And
okay.
I
That's what
try
we
to
want.
cut them.
What I was just wanted to highlight is
Yeah.
that Sunday night feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It got so bad for me that I actually had to change. So I used to have a meeting with the owners of the tech company that I worked for. And Monday morning was the morning we would go over all the numbers for the company. And I was like, why did I schedule it that day? So Sundays were a nightmare. So Sundays I would have to work then, right? I'd have to go over all the numbers. And finally it occurred to me, it'd be better if we did this on a Friday. So then I would do the work on a Thursday and not have a nervous breakdown Sunday night. So I totally feel you on that. So you felt trapped, you felt stuck, and you saw other people experiencing the same. What happened next?
So it's a pattern, right? It was always this like honeymoon period for maybe actually starting a job always was not so much fun. So it was a little awkward in the beginning, then a honeymoon period, and then misery. And I realized that I did see a lot of people go through this, but not everybody. There were some people that actually thrived in places where other people were miserable. Like I would see, my family, they'd come home from work, same thing, oh, I don't like my boss, I don't like this. But there are other people that are doing well. They're getting promotions, they're thriving. And I started taking a step back and think about, okay, like, is this just me and everyone I know? Is this just, I'm super sensitive, I'm an empath, I'm taking on everyone's feelings? Or are there really some strategies that I could implement in my work world that would help me thrive and not be as easily impacted by all of the dysfunction around me? So I started studying that. I joke that I never read a book because I want to do my own research. Like I don't read. I get through programs just by doing, and I'm a doer. So I started interviewing people and finding out what are those strategies people use. Who are these organizational rebels that really can rock convention, not get sucked into stuff, have great boundaries, and actually do well and still love their work, even when stuff's happening around them. And that's kind of the path I went for a really long time. And I studied, I started writing a book on it, I did some research, and I realized that you can stand out in the workplace and you can be a disruptor and you can not go with things just because that's the way they've always been done, and do it in a way that preserves your integrity and at the same time helps you thrive in the workplace.
Yeah. So interestingly, you left that world. So tell us about like when you finally left, started your own company, and now you're going back in with like superpower. So tell us about that part of the journey.
Oh gosh. So I don't even know. That's like a big lifespan that we're skipping here, right? So, okay, so I was miserable, dysfunctional life. Then I somehow went through this, like, time machine. And now here I am today going back into that world in a very different way, right? I right now what I do is I help organizations look at what is their vision? Why did they actually start their company? What is their why? We always talk about people's why. What is the work they want to do? What is the impact they want to have in this world? And then what is the gap between where they are right now and that impact they want to have? And then I help them to figure out the right strategies so they can close that gap. And a lot of times it just goes down to people, right? If your people are engaged, if your people are feeling supported, if they know that they're valued, they're more likely to, produce for you. And I think that it's very simplified. And, now with our world, with the pandemic, with all of these other things that have hit us, things are shifting. And what's important to people is very different. So that's the work that I do. That's the work that I love.
Yeah, super exciting. And, it's I love when you said, like, I do my own research. I interview people. And I feel that, like, that's what I do in the podcast, right? Like, I get to pick people's brains and ask the questions and dig in. And I think it's one thing to read books, but it's also like having your own experience and pulling those ideas out, especially when you talk about organizational rebels, like that really needs to be its own book. I'm just planting that seed for you again.
I have like 5 chapters written already.
Yeah.
I don't like to write or read. That's the problem. And it'll get done. It's being pulled back out. So yes, I have great case studies actually that people have given me that talk about what the workplace was like and what strategies they used to do better and to thrive and to love their work.
So I want to come back to that. We're gonna talk about that. Before we get there, so just want to make some notes. Talking about your own business, right? So a lot of our listeners, as you know, have their own businesses, and you've worked with both corporations and individuals, like all the worlds. And so when you look back at growing your company, what were your biggest aha moments or the things you learned about scaling your own business, growing your own business, having those quantum revenue breakthroughs, or even the time when, a time when there was more money in the bank account than bills that needed to be paid? I think that's always a big breakthrough for us entrepreneurs.
Well, let me see if I can do this without cursing on your podcast. Okay. So I'm trying really hard. I'm trying so hard. My life was a show. It was a show for a long time. And I will say, gosh, there's so many pieces. So one of the things is I was used to doing things on my own my entire life. So I am a person that I don't have any brothers or sisters, just me and my family. I always just kind of figured stuff out, and I did a lot of trial and error and a lot of error in that trial and error. And I was used to just figuring things out on my own for a long time. I have a little bit of a rebel in me. So if you tell me that I'm supposed to save money and I'm supposed to pay this bill and do all these, I have a little rebel that's like, I don't want to do that. I want to do something fun. And so balancing that for many years in the best way I could led to a pretty disastrous show. So I'll explain what that means. It looked great on the outside. So on the outside, I've always been really great at connecting with people, at getting work, at doing great work. And behind the scenes, I was too smart to get help. I thought I was too smart to get help because I've always figured stuff out on my own, and I didn't want to let people in to some of the shame and secrets that I was hiding. And so, when people talk about imposter syndrome and all that, folks always say, "Oh, Barbara, you had imposter syndrome?" It's like, yeah, I fought that for a really long time because it looked great on the outside, and it was, but behind the scenes, everything wasn't neat. And part of that was because I was so afraid to ask for help, terrified that someone would know that I didn't have it all together. And because of that, I had my 20s and 30s and early 40s, not financially where I wanted to be. And on the outside, I had a lot of work. I had a lot of clients. I did great work. People loved me, lots of referrals, all of that, but it was feast or famine. I would get a check for $20,000. I'd pay all my bills. I'd have nothing for another 6 months until I got another check. And that was how my world was. And it took until my mid 40s when I had, things were falling apart left and right, and I was holding on, like, the picture of someone like just drowning and having that one finger out, of the ocean. And I was holding on with everything I could. And finally, at some point, it just broke. And I was 44, and I was looking and I was thinking, like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know if I should be a business owner anymore. I don't know how I'm going to be able to make ends meet. I don't know what value I'm giving to the planet anymore. And it was one of those where I had to make a decision. Am I going to put on my big girl pants and get help and figure it out and ask for things I need? Or was I going to just keep going in this cycle forever? And so I did. I reached out. I joined that polka dot powerhouse at that time. And, the short story was, I started a chapter, and all the people that were joining were all like massage therapists, and they were acupuncturists, and they were psychics, and they were, all of this stuff that in my world, in my left brain type A world didn't even connect. I met Ursula at that time, so I met you at that time, and I was like, why are all of these like woo woo spiritual freaky deeks coming to me? No offense, because I am one. I just want you to, no offense for those of you that are like, oh my God, I already hate Barbara. No, I get that. That's where I was at that time. And, I send my past Barbara lots of love. And I didn't realize that at that time that I also had intuitive gifts, and I was actually way more spiritual and intuitive. And instead of fighting that piece, I finally opened up for help and support and coaching, and you were actually one of my first coaches ever. And it's life changing, right? It's life changing. So that's the short answer, and hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I would say 95% of our guests come on here and talk about having had imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always a big surprise to everyone, like including myself. Like I've talked about, I think I did a whole show on imposter syndrome, and just the fear of that, whatever's behind it. And I also think that's what drives us to work on ourselves and to be the best that we can be. So there's that, the both sides of it. So, so many things I want to ask you. Today we're talking about rewriting your story to exponentially expand your revenue. So let's go there. Like, how and when did you get this idea of rewriting your story? How did you do it? And how has that served you so that others may do that as well?
Okay, so I do it every day. So this is right. It's not like, oh, let's just rewrite it, put it on the shelf, and we're done. So I don't remember who said it. I think it was probably one of your mentors, but I don't read, so I'm not really sure. But when you're born with two fears: the fear of being alone and the fear of falling. And every other fear, insecurity, is something that you've learned in some way. When your mom says to you, oh, you're never going to be able to do that. You're so ditzy, or you're not smart enough, or whatever it is. And that stuff sticks with you. And you could be, top level CEO, goddess of the world, and still have some of those old stories playing in your head. You never know where they're going to come back and like bite you. And at the same time, it's really important to get rid of it. And I will actually, another thing that you've really helped me with, which I don't know if I ever said that, but now's the time, is it was probably sales camp. You had us write out, and I call it our organizational story, but it was the vision. In 6 months from now, if your irrational mind wasn't telling you all the things you couldn't do, what is your vision? And write it out as if it's happening now. So, and this is something that I use all the time with my clients. I modified it a little bit, and at the same time, this has been the most helpful for me to rewrite my story. I write it out. I write out who I'm celebrating with, how much money's in my bank account, when I'm at the bar and saying, drinks on me, to everyone in the bar in Hawaii. I'm picturing that. I'm feeling it. And I'm not worrying about the how. I'm writing that out, because if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. And then I do what you had us do in that sales camp. I wrote out, and I continue to do this, write out, and I call it my CRAP story. And it's basically, I get a junky piece of paper, I get a bottle of wine, I get incense, and then I realized I was dating myself, so now I say essential oils. But I get, because I'm an 80s kid, we did incense. So so I get my bottle of wine, I get my essential oils, I get the bubble bath, and I write out why I'm not there. And that's where I write out or encourage people to write out, who do you want to blame? Who do you want to yell at? Who was the person that screwed you in fifth grade that you're still carrying that message? Who called you fat? Whatever it is, you write out why you're not there yet. Why aren't you at your vision? And then, which we also did in sales camp, is ceremoniously get rid of it. And so I think we crumpled it up there. I burn it. You can burn it, you can throw it on a mountain, whatever it is. But it really is the process of looking at where do you really want to be and really feeling those feelings and then getting rid of all of the junk so you can be there. And so that's what I do. And I do that regularly. I mean, at least once a year, I go through that activity just to keep focused on my vision, which changes.
Yeah, beautiful. And, I learned that originally, and there's so many different versions of it, and so many of us are doing it. Originally, I learned about it in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. The idea of what we're doing is bringing in that future self. So that self 6 months from us, when we step into that moment of celebration, that person, our future self, already knows. And when you start to access that knowing and you bring that back with you, your subconscious mind starts to work from that. And it's so powerful because stuff just starts to shift and people start to show up and things start to happen. And it's like, whoa, I can't explain that. And we don't need to explain it to experience it. So for our listeners, if you haven't been practicing scripting as your future self, it's so powerful. And I love the piece. Yeah, when we were at sales camp, we couldn't start fires inside the hotel. So we just ripped them
It's
up.
fine. It's fine. I still got it. I understood.
But I always recommend, like, if you tear up your story, make sure it goes all the way outside of your house. You don't want it floating around. So yeah, so rewriting your story to exponentially expand your revenue is one of the most powerful things I think we can do as business owners, and also one of the most overlooked things, because I think people can think, well, that's so simple, that can't work.
Yep.
Absolutely. And yet, even as you're doing it, as you're writing, I laugh because, I mean, when I wrote my first story, I was like, I was crying the whole time, right? My horrible, like, blame everybody story. But it illuminates, like, the reasons you're holding on to why you can't have what you have. And it's a big lie. It's such a big lie. So I appreciate you sharing that. So what's happened since the pandemic? Let's talk about that, because I think I know business owners, business owners who had $10 million businesses, laid them down at the front end of the pandemic. They were in the training world like we were. And it was a scary, weird, interesting time, right? And yet you and I are both still here. We know a lot of people who have gone on to thrive during the pandemic. What was that like for you from, March of 2020? What kind of stories did you have to let go of to keep going?
I had to let go of the story that I needed an office, that I needed to see people, and that I wasn't professional unless if I was working out of my bedroom or my my room in my house. That was big for me, and that was actually really hard because I didn't share my whole past, but a big part of my past was around how you looked and appearances and all of this, what's professional, what's not professional, people that are spiritual or woo-woo, people that go outside or granola. Like I was born in this crazy, crazy bubble. And for me, breaking through that and realizing that I actually don't need an office. I don't need things. I just have enough that I am enough, and the work that I do is enough. And that was really powerful for me. And now, I don't want to leave my house. I don't want to go outside. I don't even want to get in office anymore. I realized that was something that was about appearances. It wasn't about making a difference. And again, like I have to keep rewriting that story. Like I am more evolved than I was 10, 20 years ago, but I am in no way there yet, 100%. So that was interesting. The other piece is I realized that the connection that a lot of people need is so important. And it was one of the things that I did throughout the pandemic was I just checked in with people. Like I would wake up every day and say, who can I give value to today? And I would pick up the phone and I would actually call a human. Like I wouldn't text. I wouldn't
What?
text. Yeah, I actually picked
With
up
a
the phone.
phone?
Like no one would answer, but I would pick up the phone, and that's a practice I still do today. I wake up every day and I think, who can I give value to? Not who's paying me, who's a client. It's like who pops in my head. I even sent someone a text message before. I was just like, I just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. I didn't call because it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. But that's the kind of thing that shifted for me during the pandemic, realizing how important that connection is for folks. I used to think that I could just do everything by myself. I didn't need it. Like I said, I went through years thinking I could just figure it all out on my own. I don't need people. I don't need to ask for help. I don't need. And now I was like, oh yeah, I actually do like that connection.
Yeah. And it's so much faster and easier. Like, let's just get the support we need. Okay. So circling back, I love that. Like what you did, really connecting with humans.
Yes.
Especially now that we live in Zoom boxes, right? We forget that the phone still works. Even if they don't answer, you can leave a message. I love that. So circling back to quantum revenue,
Yes.
what are your top 2 tips for busting through an income ceiling? What's been your experience with that?
So it's really focusing, for me, it's been focusing on the feeling that I know I will have once I get to that next level. And I know this sounds super out there for some, but it really is about embodying that feeling. And I got that again from you and from Rebecca. It's been really, really helpful. If someone would have told me 20 years ago to embody a feeling, I would have been like, WTF? Like, I don't know what that is and how to do it. And that's something that I've really worked on, because my mind would say, oh, you don't have this money. You have no money in your bank account. You don't have you need to pay bills. And it's like all this chitter chatter instead of just focusing on the feeling and embodying that feeling. And for me, it's peace. That's the feeling is peace. There's no stress. There's no worry. I have enough. I have more than enough to do what's in my highest and best for my family and my business. And that to me is my definition of success, which I've also had to revise actually in this past year. I used to think success was how much money you had. And now I realize it's about being able to make the decisions and do things that are in the highest and best of your family and your business. That to me is success. It's not a number in the same way.
Yeah, so beautiful. It's not a number.
Mm.
And, really, knowing that's interesting. You said that too, about knowing, like embodying a feeling every day. So let's talk about that for a second. How would you describe the feeling that you embodied, or one of those feelings, or like, is it feeling of confidence or peace, or maybe you said it was peace, or like what really worked for you?
It's so hard to tell someone how to do it, right? Like that's why 10 years ago, if someone said to me, embody peace, I would have been like, oh, what? And so
How, like, where do you feel it in your body? Is it your stomach? Is it your heart? Is it your soul? Is
it
it like
is my
expansive?
entire being, and I have to close my eyes because I
Yeah.
really, it's this gosh, I couldn't meditate. I couldn't do any of these things for so
A
long.
lot of people
And
can't. Yeah.
I had to teach myself. And so it's just yeah, it's like tingling in my body, it's chills in my body, and it's um you can feel yourself when you tighten up, and you can feel yourself when you relax, and it really is about just grounding in your body, and having your feet on the floor and your seat in your seat, like you always say. Your seat in your seat, your feet on the floor, and just feeling like just paying attention. There's like this mindfulness. And I guess, so when I feel like, for example, I had a time when someone, it was a cyber crime, and they stole $5,000 from me. And, feeling like just in like the stress come on, and saying, I don't have another $5,000 that I'm going to be able to pay. My client's waiting for money. I thought I had the money, I was paying them, but someone else took the money, and like my client still needs money, and like all of this stuff. I literally had to take a step back and just get out of my head, not try to figure things out intellectually, and just feel in my body that it's going to be okay, and this peace. And I don't know how to explain it in any other way than that, but it's like you have to literally tell yourself, like, stop spinning, stop, like, hit yourself over the head with that spiritual 2x4 to stop.
Yeah.
And just be and trust. And so all of that goes into embodying a feeling.
Yeah, it's good. I think that's a great way to explain it and tune into it. And I think it's also a great reminder that you don't have to be a great meditator or anything like that to just embody a feeling and to hold on to that. And the easy way to think about it too is it's the opposite. A lot of times, like the opposite of whatever you don't want to feel anymore. Like when you were talking about the cybercrime, you probably felt stressed and there was scarcity and like in that feeling, versus moving out of it and saying, you know what, more money is coming. I have peace or faith or trust in that. I'm just going to lean into that feeling. And while we can't measure that per se from a quantum physics perspective yet, I have a knowing we will be able to do that someday. And in the meantime, we all just get to practice that, because I guarantee you when you're out of scarcity and you're out of just those lower emotions and you're into joy or love, it's just so much easier. And you don't care as much about the other stuff. You don't get all wound up about it. So, okay, we're past our time and I could talk to you forever, but, and I know you have something for free, and you also have a special offer for our listeners. Go ahead and share what you have.
All right. So it's just hot off the presses. So it's not on a fancy landing page or anything right now, but I have a strategy guide, which is a written guide that talks about how it's important to abandon those pre-pandemic workforce strategies for engagement. So if you have a company now where people are not as engaged, they don't really want to be there, they're not going up and beyond, and you want to use some information to engage those folks and find the right hires, I have a strategy guide. You can just email team, TEAM, at organizationalrebel.com. It's a mouthful. Team at organizationalrebel.com, and just put strategy guide in the subject line and we'll get that out to you. So that is my free offer. And then, one of the things that's really important is being intentional, in addition to staying in the feeling and all of that, but being intentional with your plan. So if you don't have a strategic plan for your business or an action plan, I think of it more as an action plan. That's something that we are also offering at businessstrategicplan.com. And that's at an incredible, ridiculously low investment. And you get to meet with our top strategist and map out a plan for the quarter. So that's at businessstrategicplan.com.
Beautiful. So go to businessstrategicplan.com. and you'll find the business action plan session with one of your top strategists. And then one more time, we can email team at
organizationalrebel.com.
Perfect. All right. And we'll also have that in the show notes. Dr. Barbara Portzline, thanks for being here today to talk about how to rewrite your story and exponentially expand your revenue. We loved having you. We're going to have you back. So just know
so.
For sure.
Thank you.
And to our listeners all over the world, thanks for hanging out with us this week. We hope things are shifting for you. If there's anything we can do for you at all, or if you have topic suggestions, you can email us at contact@ursulainc.co. All right, that's it for now. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. And if you are ready to make your next quantum leap, let's do it. Ursula invites you to join us at the 2X Intensive. Go to salescoachnow.com/apply. Don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast app.